So let us begin. Ina mana, ina reo e nā karanga maha o te wā. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko te ao mārengi tōku tūranga waiwai, ko McDonald te iwi, ko Ākina te hapu, no paniki aho, ki Ākina Foundation o Himahi ana, ko Louise taku noa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome you here today on this Zoom. I am here in the Ākina office in Poniki in Wellington. My tūranga waiwai is the Tinakori Hills that sit above us. My family has been on those hills since 1951, and I'm honoured to continue. I'm now the fourth generation, or my son is the fourth generation who lives on those hills. My name is Louise Ākina. I'm the Chief Executive of the Ākina Foundation. And we're very excited to not only continue the conversations around social enterprise and the role that social enterprise has globally in our economy this week, but also particularly what does social enterprise and impact in our economy mean for us here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. As we've all experienced this crazy 2020, just how important it is that we have these conversations and connections with each other to not only realise that we have an extraordinary social enterprise community here in New Zealand, but for us to continue the conversation about why social enterprise must be an important part of our economy as we recover from COVID. Somebody very wise said to me in about April that COVID didn't cause inequality in New Zealand. It certainly put a spotlight on it. And we're very excited to think about the opportunity that social enterprise can deliver in our economy to not only provide the solutions for those significant social problems, but also those significant environmental challenges that we have today, but we also will be passing on to our children and our grandchildren into the future. So it is my pleasure to welcome a few of my very close friends who are joining us here on this Zoom for the next hour to talk about what we have been doing over these last couple of years around building a strong, thriving social enterprise sector in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but also to open the conversation for this week ahead. 3 years ago, this week, we all went down to Christchurch, many of us here, and we took part in probably a pivotal moment for social enterprise in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We brought together 1,616, I think, Elaine can correct me, participants from over 40 countries who started to have a conversation about what was social enterprise in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And the biggest thing I learned from that is we got confidence in ourselves. We were not only there to learn and to have that conversation on a global basis, but we absolutely contributed to it, and we continue to contribute to the innovation, to the absolute necessity of social enterprise in any economy, and particularly a developed economy like New Zealand. But also we continue to strengthen the voice of Indigenous business and how Indigenous business can actually contribute to the solutions that we need, not only for our planet, but most importantly for our people. So those are going to be big conversations that I all ask you to contribute, not only this week during the Aotearoa Conversations, but also be proud of your own voice, be proud of who we are here in New Zealand when you're having those conversations as part of the Social Enterprise World Forum, throughout these evenings that we've got ahead. So stay awake, particularly if you've got some interesting conversations that you want to be part of at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, but also make sure that you're continuing to reflect and be part of these conversations during the day, because it is an opportunity for us to reconnect and share what we've learned and heard, but also to start thinking about what that means for the continued journey of social enterprise here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So with that, I thank you for being part of this, and I'd like to pass over to my very close friend, Matthew, who's going to talk about the Impact Initiative, talk about what we've been doing over these last couple of years, and we'll also be welcoming two other close friends, Nicola and Cliff, for that conversation as well. So, tēnā koutou, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Lou. That's awesome. Thanks for the welcome and the introduction. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, nei rā tia mihi. Wonderful to see you all. Ko Matthew Luxon, taku unua, no Aotearoa, aho, engari kei te hare koa oke matakanakana, he kangarua moko. So, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Folks, I'm talking to you from Matakana, where I live, up here on a small permaculture farm. But I've been, as Lou said, I've been lucky to join the Ākina crew over the last 3 years and work on this impact initiative, the social enterprise sector development program with the Department of Internal Affairs and the New Zealand government. And in what a 3 year or 2.5, well, how long has it been? Like 3 years, yeah, 3 years. The 3 years it's been as we've tried to find our way through a way to help the sector as a whole. So just by way of quick introduction, I do 3 things. I have a waste consulting business. So I work with councils and government throughout New Zealand on waste advising. I run a couple of social enterprises. One is a couple of transfer stations up here in Maharangi. So we've got Maharangi Waste Busters that I run. And then, as I said, I'm lucky to work with the Ākina team on this program and also on the Forward program. So what this is about is that if, like me, you guys are all involved in your own organisations and you're trying to do what you can to make a difference, and looking at this group here, and I know a lot of you, you certainly are doing that within your organisations and social enterprise champions. And I suppose what this week's about, or this opportunity, or the invitation, or provocation even, is to lift your eyes a bit and try and think about New Zealand, social enterprise in New Zealand from a strategic point of view. Like, what is it that we need in Aotearoa for social enterprise? And that's what this program's been working on for the last 3 years. And yeah, not all of us have the opportunity to do that because we're busy with our mahi in our own organisations. So, but this week is a chance to sort of try to take what you know and your expertise from your organisations and think about it in terms of the whole country. Because there is plenty of issues, and as Lou said, there's all the social issues and environmental issues that that we're keen to address, and that's what this program's trying to help with. So our plan, or my plan for this next 45 minutes through till 11 o'clock, is to just give you an introduction to the Impact Initiative and what we've been doing there with this sector development program. And then I've got Nicola Patrick and Wanganui and Cliff Colhoun will join us from Kaitaia, and they've been working with us as well on this very closely on this program. So have some comments from them, and then it'll be open for any questions or comments you guys might have. So I'm going to, through the magic of the internet, share my screen, and maybe if you can just give me a thumbs up that you guys, yes, that you're seeing that. It's all good. Cool. So so folks, the Impact Initiative is the name we call it because it's much more interesting than saying the Social Enterprise Sector Development Program, and then you started trying to avoid the 3-letter acronyms or 5-letter acronyms. But this is a program that started 3 years ago almost, or no, sorry, 2.5 years ago. And it came out of the New Zealand...
Matthew, sorry.
Yes.
Your we can see the background slide, the background and stuff as well. If you can get to full screen view, perfect.
Double thumbs up. So this program, as I said, started from the Department of Internal Affairs. Alfred Nato was started putting the program together, and then we had an election, and so then it carried on under Pene Henare. And now we have the Minister, Poto Williams, as our Minister in charge of this through, as the Minister for the Community and Voluntary Sector. And there were 3 goals for this program. And you may remember it was being talked about at the Social Enterprise World Forum when we met in Christchurch. But these 3 goals are to, create an ecosystem which the social enterprises can thrive in. What is it that we need to absolutely thrive and flourish? And we'll talk about that. I want to be clear on what it is the sector contributes And we've got these goals around, or the government does, around social and environmental outcomes. And so how does our sector help with that? And then the last one was the government's keen to know what it needs to do or what it can do to support the sector going forward as well. So that was the goals of the program. And there we go. So 3 years. So the first year we were, you know, it's always hard that first year. You're sort of having to get going, but you're also trying to work out exactly what you want to do, because one of the biggest bits of feedback we had from the sector was, don't go reinventing the wheel. You know, that's the classic comment, isn't it, that you hear, and something we're obviously keen to avoid doing. So the first year was trying to work out, okay, what is it that exactly that the sector is going to need support with going forward? Where can this program help the most? How can it be the most useful to practitioners? And so, so that was the first year. The year two, we targeted everything down, and I'll talk about that, 4 work streams. And so then that was all about delivery and working on, okay, let's do some stuff now, which I'll tell you about. And then in year 3, which is where we are now, is really starting to focus back in towards government and feeding back into government what it is that they're needing or what they could help with going forward beyond the life of this program. So the program goes through till March next year, and it's going great. So, so the next slide, if I took this. Yeah. So we decided after that first year, we were talking to everyone. In the first year, we had about 20 odd work streams that we looked at. There were all sorts of things, you know, the impact of AI on the future of work, you know, the youth and social enterprise, education, social enterprise. There was a whole bunch of things. But feedback from the sector, and we did a lot of consultation. We were going around the country meeting with social entrepreneurs all around the place, and some of you may have come to those kitchen table talks and various meetings. We decided to focus on these 4 areas. So we realized that firstly, people needed, you know, if you've got a social enterprise like we do up here, Maharangi Wastebusters, we need a market, we need customers. So to have an access to the market is around that social procurement thing. So we won this contract, just by way of example, Maharangi Wastebusters with Auckland Council, and they put out a social procurement process. So it was a community enterprise, social enterprise that won that contract because price was important, and actually we were the best value for money, but it was those broader outcomes. It was all the other stuff that we could create, you know, employment, waste diversion, and help with local economic development. So that was that's an area that we've been working on. The Forward program is very closely connected to this as well, which see Liv from ANZ here, who's very much part of that program. So then that's great. So you've got a market, you've got customers, but you need some cash to get going, and things get tricky when you want to scale up or start getting that cash, because there is no legal structure for social enterprise. In some countries there is, but in New Zealand you're really choosing between setting up a company or a charitable trust or a trust, or both, maybe an incorporated society. So when you go to the banks or go anywhere to get some finance, life can get a little bit harder because it's all a bit unusual. You know, it's not the standard sort of situation. You're not necessarily a charity, you're not, because you're selling goods and services, and most of your income comes from trade. On the other hand, you can't sell shares in your company, so you can't offer investors any shares. So, in some situations, or a lot of situations. So this issue around access to finance very quickly brings up the issue of legal structure as a result. And so that's been an area of work that Jackson Rowland has been working in, particularly for us. And there's been some reports done on that, which I'll talk about. Then we need to, I'm jumping around a bit because it suits my story better. The capability development bit is around saying, okay, well, that's all well and good, but what do you do? You know, how do we make sure that the people in Greymouth or in Tokoroa or in Kaitaia, Wanganui are able to get the access to skills and training and every support that they might need or want? and that's around this capability development stuff. I'm going to get Nicola to talk about that shortly, because one of the things we did was we did a trial where we had a network of local regional intermediaries to help with local capability development, and we did that trial last year, and that's carried on. And finally, is it all worth it? You know, we want to know what's the point if we're doing all this activity and it's not making any difference. And this is really that second part of our goals around, are we contributing to solving or addressing social and environmental problems? And so Clemmy is working on this. Clemmy Baker is working on this for us. And this is about, it's hard, you know, it's how do you measure your impact? And waste, it's easy. How many tons did you divert from the landfill? But it gets a bit trickier when you start thinking about some of those other social benefits of what does it mean to offer jobs or create jobs, and local economic development and all the rest of it. So we're now starting to work, as I say, on this last year of the program, and we're having a lot of conversations with government around these recommendations, and it's starting to emerge now. What is these recommendations? We've got 5 that are shaping up. This isn't a case of just presenting a nice looking report to government at the end. If that's all that comes out of this program, to quote an inspirational woman, then we haven't really done what we need to do. We need to report. We want the outcome. We want a flourishing sector. We want social and environmental issues to be addressed through social enterprise. So it's not. So this stuff will evolve. You know, that's why I'm not just presenting you with a set in stone issue. As the conversations evolve with government, this will evolve as well. So our work, there's a bunch of reports. I'd encourage you to check out the impactinitiative.org.nz. There's for these reports. This one in particular, the part of a larger whole, gives 30 years of background. Social enterprise in Aotearoa goes back a lot longer than that. You know, thousands, 2,000 years. But we've looked at the last 30 years for this report. This issue around legal structures, it's well worth having a look at. And then this hubs pilot that Nicola was involved in. There's a whole bunch of case studies on that website. You'll recognise some of these businesses without even having to have their titles there. So check them out if you want some inspiration around what's possible. And then we've also started building up this capability stuff around some tools. So yeah, a whole bunch of tools to help people as they're getting their businesses ready. We got each of the 4 workstream leads to do, I and myself, to do a 2 or 3 minute video, just talking about their workstream. So you can go a little bit deeper there. And that's on the Impact Initiative website and on YouTube. And if you want to know more, jump there. So that's just a quick overview. That's the Minister, Poto Williams, and some of our crew there. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now so that we can jump back and invite Nicola to talk for a few minutes and answer a couple of questions that I have that I've already presented to her. Just to give some context, one of the things we did is, like I said, we really wanted social enterprise practitioners and supporters really involved in this program all the way through. That was a big, yeah, it was a non-negotiable for us. And so we did a lot of, you know, as I say, traipsing around the country, talking to people, but we also set up this working group, sort of a leadership group of people that are working in the sector doing social enterprise, who meet up and to help support the program and feed into it on a really regular basis. So Nicola's part of that group, as is Cliff Colhoun, who's just joining us now. So yeah, so Nicola, I'll just open the floor to you. There's a couple of questions there. You know, what are you most proud of this program and so far? As it might be an opening question. I'm sure you'll take it from there.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thank you. And it's great to be here and be part of this and meet people virtually. So I'm from Wanganui, and I've founded an organisation called Thrive Wanganui. And our vision or rather our purpose statement is enabling profit for purpose enterprises to flourish from Wanganui. I'm also a regional councillor on Horizons Regional Council, so connected in different ways there. For me, what I've been really excited about is being involved in this, what started in the Year 1 program, this regional hubs pilot. So we worked together, and what it meant, especially at these times, we got to know each other face to face, in person. Remember the good old days when you met people? We even stayed overnight together and shared food in close proximity to each other. So it's been really neat because we've actually formed deep relationships. And at the end of that pilot, what we decided as the participants is that we wanted to keep going together, and we wanted to create a strong voice for social enterprise capability building, and therefore also advocating for social enterprises from our places. So really strong theme around place-based. The other was very strong themed around what does place-based mean, particularly for those of us in the provinces. You can get an impression of social enterprise that it's cool, trendy, young hipsters doing stuff in urban settings. And that's true, because it is, but it's also something else. So it's also very flax roots based, very small and very local. And that's part of the voice that we most want, well, some of us in particular, people like me from places like Wanganui, which have a lot of hardship, really want to make sure is strong in the development of our sector across New Zealand. And for me, being part of this and connecting to people in this working group that I'm part of means that for the development of Thrive Wanganui ourselves, I've got this wonderful support network. So when times are tough, and they often are, that we can just keep persisting because we know we're going to get there. We know we're surrounded by people who understand what we're about, and the momentum is there, and it's a matter of timing. And what it means is, while we're an intermediary working with social enterprises, trying to build their capability, we're actually also a startup social enterprise ourselves. So we also have those insights and experiences. And probably one of the other things that's happened concurrently with our involvement in the program is we have been involved in a Ministry of Social Development funded program called The Generator. And The Generator has been about helping people in financial hardship establish their own self-employment, micro enterprises, get extra income in their lives. Some of them are social enterprises and some of them aren't. But either way, we've helped over the last year about 30 people get funded and get ready to go with their businesses. There's about 20 that are up and running already. And through the Impact Initiative, we actually got some funding to look at what we called second stage support for people who have been through the Generator program with a social enterprise style model and had that startup support, but actually now what do they need next? And for me, I think that's a really critical part of the puzzle, which is we can get people started, but how do we help sustain them? How do we help them when times get tough? How do we help them when they hit a bump in the road? Because we know what it's like, right? You come in with deep passion and vision, and then you get busy, and then it gets hard. And how do you operate in that environment and stay focused on the difference you're trying to make in the world and weave that through the elements that you're trying to deliver? So we've had, thanks to the Impact Initiative, extra support to work with 3 examples of those. So for me, that's been a real highlight as well. And probably one of the final things is it's really great to be part of this emerging network. We're so emerging, we don't even have a name. We have a terrible name, a working title, which is, sorry for this, Community-Led Enterprise Development Network. So if you stayed awake through that, you're all right. We'll come up with something much better, but what we're finding, of course, is that it's really hard to have a group of busy people working with busy people to try and set up something new. But I'm speaking on that later in the week, tomorrow night, as part of the Social Enterprise World Forum. And we had a pre-talk with the people from Ireland and the people from Victoria in Australia. And it was hilarious because they both came on the call first and said, look, we're so new, we only launched in July. And the other person said, we're so new, we don't even have a legal entity yet. And I was able to say, well, we're so new, we don't even have a name. So, you know, we're all in the same boat together. So it's really, you know, the value of being connected is huge. So that's probably enough from me to kick us off. Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, Nicola. Awesome. Cliff, welcome. You made it through the computer problems in the far north there. So Cliff is CEO of CBEC, Community Business Environment Centre up in Kaitaia. We've got about 8 social enterprises with about 80 odd staff. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Cliff. So yeah, the question, well, you can just say whatever you want to say. I'm sure you will. But the general question was, you know, what is it that you're most proud of from this program, or feel that this program's helping with?
Kia ora, Matthew and the other panelists and anyone who might be listening. Really good to be here and being part of all this. Love it. And I suppose I can't be accused of being new. I could be accused of being old. But yeah, CBEC, the organisation I work for and co-founded with a guy, Warren Snow, back in 1989, has been going for 30 years. And we are, like Matthew said, a reasonable sized employer in our town. Now we've got a small town of about 20,000 people. And so we're one of the larger employers. And we don't compete with our private enterprise. We quite often joint venture with them on projects, but we look at developing new enterprises for our town, or a variation to what's already happening. So I suppose very briefly, that's what we do. Like I say, Matthew's highlighted, we employ a reasonable number of people, and we survive with no government funding. And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't get government funding. We could do a hell of a lot more if we had it. But you can get to a point where, and it's hard grind to achieve that, and hard grind to stay in that place. But we do survive in that way. And I suppose the reason we survive is because we're not scared of profit. We call it surplus because it's not profit as in someone will take that money away. It stays in our community, in our organisation, to either do new work or to finance things that every now and again any enterprise has its ups and downs. Anyway, that's enough about us. Answering your question, Matthew, I'll get back to the question. What am I proud of? I suppose I'm incredibly proud of the partnership that's started all this project. It's been amazing journey, and it's been over 2 years now. And that's at Ākina Foundation and the Community Enterprise Network Trust. Just not by chance meeting, but a lucky get together, definitely, that a little time before the project came up, we had already been getting together and decided there was a real need to work closer together in some form, and the opportunity came with us, and so we both jumped at it. And I suppose the key thing, and the reason it was such a great opportunity has grown to what it is because both organisations already existed. It would have been a lot harder if they were coming together specifically to start something like this without a lot of understanding and knowledge about the sector we're working in. And I suppose the other thing, we're both organisations prepared to take a massive risk. We didn't know each other that well. We had met a couple of times, but we didn't know each other. We weren't working together or had those types of relationships. So it was a big leap of faith to actually get in and create something between two quite different organisations. Ākina, sort of more urban-based, and Community Enterprise Network Trust, CEN, was more regional and regional based, and so quite different ways of approaching this whole idea of a growing social enterprise. So very proud of the fact that we've actually put that together. and able to make it work right through. It was, and we didn't have to make it work, actually. It worked. It worked really, really well, surprisingly well, the combination and the relationship and the individuals that were there as from both sides. The other thing I'm really proud of is we both were really keen right from day one that if we're going to do this, we want to have some serious impact. That was the driver for both organisations. And one of the things we realised right from the beginning that that the foundation to achieving that impact, and we both agreed on this, was that if innovation is great in your community, doing good things is a great thing, but they generally only affect your community. Impact is when you can transfer that great thing across the whole country. And we realised that that's what we wanted to do. We didn't want to just, you know, like it's great having good individual activities and they service their communities, but impact was to really bring about change radically across the country. So that was one of our early understandings of how this relation was going to roll out. We wanted to work along those lines, and that would form the basis of the organisation. So very proud that we got to that. We were able to find some incredibly quick common ground, but I believe the most important thing is getting, we've got some pretty big things ahead of us, not just COVID, a lot more than COVID to deal with internationally. And if we can't bring about this change required quickly, then all the good little initiatives all over the world are not going to actually make that much impact. So that was a good thing that we started off on. Another thing I'm really proud of is that this grouping has got the respect of government. We've been able to bring it together, and the combination of Ākina and practitioners has been wonderful. You know, I wouldn't call you academics, Louise, wouldn't dare because you might hit me, but you know, Wellington-based, urban-based, as opposed to out in your rural communities, quite a bit of difference. But you know, the combination, the strengths of both were really important. You know, the output of the people in Wellington and Auckland through Ākina has been amazing, and the practitioners be able to actually sort of bring that knowledge, and usually based on quite a lot of time in the sector. So, and I think that was the other thing. Social enterprise seems like a new thing, but we recognised very early on that we couldn't go forward without first looking backwards. So we looked back before we went forward to see what had been done before us, and what has come from that, all that great mahi in history. And the community sector in the UK is over 100 years, social sector, community sector, over 100 years old. The sector in New Zealand is over 40 years old. And so there's some serious history and people and activities to learn from. So we did that first. So very proud that we're able to actually foot it with government and present ourselves well. And I think we won't just give them a whole lot of advice, we'll also tell them how they can do this, the change that's required. And so I suppose I suppose just finishing, you know, so very proud that we're able to put all that together and present, and we will be presenting something serious. It's not just a whole lot of words. It's action. It's steps to change that will come out of it, and a real encouragement, a very firm encouragement that government needs to do that, whoever the government will be. And I think that's the key, is that we've got support from all political parties on this. National Party set this up, in actual fact, the contract that we've got. Labour, Green, New Zealand First have picked it up and run with it from there. And so we don't have to convince government's a good idea. We just got to give them the knowledge and the understanding. That's all we have to do. They're already bought into it, and be credible about how we actually can support whoever is in government to get to do more of this. So it's really up to us. You know, it's up to us to lose it. We don't have to convince people. They actually are on the page. So it's really up to us to go and be very smart about how we deliver this to government. So I'm very proud of the whole process and how we've actually hung together and all gained tremendously from the experience, and built some great friendships along the way. So I'm very proud of that.
Awesome. Thanks, Cliff. Fantastic. Folks, is anyone at this point just, oh, look at that, right on cue. Well done, Ellen. I was just going to say, has anyone got any questions or comments you'd like to make at this point? Just open it up to the floor. Just raise your hand or start talking. question from Ellen is, what are the challenges ahead of you for the Impact Initiative and the Sector Development Program? Lou, did you want to have a crack at that?
Yeah, I will try my non-academic way to. I think that's the first time ever. You obviously didn't see my my transcript from the university, so I think the first time I've ever been called an academic. So thank you for that. Yeah, this is a really interesting time and a really challenging time, because we're at that point of really working with government about what comes next, and it's not about them reaching into their, into their buckets and pulling out more cash. That's not what we need. What we need is significant commitment and action from government to really build, continue to strengthen those foundations that social enterprise needs to continue to thrive. So these recommendations are pretty transformational. They're really about how do we co-design and co-deliver those with government in order for them to have a long-term legacy. It is about significant commitment to social procurement that we've seen over these certainly over this last 12 months from government. But how do we go deeper with that? How do we ensure that there is, the capability and the support required to support Māori and Pasifika businesses coming through social procurement channels? How do we ensure that impact is valued within those transactions where both government and corporate are buying goods and services from organisations that deliver impact? We want to make sure that there is the long-term capital required where impact is valued within that, and investors can see both the financial return and the impact return. We want to make sure that capability is accessible and relevant to people right across our motos. So these are really, really important things that government need to be committing to, and also designing. And so the engagement that we've had with government is about developing those recommendations together. So the Impact Initiative and government, because it's not, as Matthew said, it's not about a report at the end of it. It's about action and being able to see that long-term legacy in the future. So that's the challenge, I think, ahead for us, is given the fact that when an election is a month later, what does that mean? Given that there may be changes in the ministers that we're working with, given that the senior officials are moving around quite a lot in roles that have a COVID focus, and therefore what does that mean for their day-to-day work? Those are all things that we've got to take into account, but we can't let any of those be an excuse for us. We've got to be able to drive forward and ensure that when we hit the 31st of March, government really pick up the baton and run with it, with the support of the sector as well. And I think that's why this time is really, really exciting for all of us.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right. Coco, the question is who's the organizer side and who's the social entrepreneur side? There is no sides, I'm afraid. Aotearoa is just way too small. So we're all, so Ākina, just to be clear about it, Ākina is a social enterprise itself, and is a national intermediary for the social enterprise sector, but it trades, it has to sell goods and services in order to exist. And so so I guess we all are social enterprises. So Lou is the CEO of Ākina. Ellen used to work there as well. Cliff, Nicola and myself are all wear lots of different hats as well, running businesses or social enterprises and then contributing to this program. So it's a bit of a coalition of the willing, but it would be fair to say that, yeah, everybody has certainly the leadership has social enterprise experience. So, Bruce, how will follow up to the Impact Initiative happen after the contract is over, and who will do it to be sure government really does pick up the baton? Yes, and run with its recommendations. Great question, and that's exactly the challenge, Bruce. I think what you're tapping into there is this issue around that. It's hard, this, I see that sign behind Lou there, make change happen. Making change happen at a legislative, regulatory level is really hard. I've learned a lot in the last couple of years, and there's a lot of cups of coffee, it's, there's so many cups of coffee because so much happens in that networking, and but it's so slow. And you know, running a recycling centre is great because you've got cars come in, trailers drop off stuff, big trucks, you got big diggers, and at the end of the day, you go, great, that stuff that was there is now there. That's awesome, thumbs up. This stuff with government change is really difficult because you don't get that every day, and I'm sure you all know what that's like. And so, so the challenge, like Lou said, is that if we just present a report at the end, then we wouldn't have any confidence at all that it would carry on. And so we're trying now, from well, even quite a few months ago, to really build in the buy-in within government. Now, of course, throw in an election, and that creates another another challenge, and then a COVID or a global pandemic where suddenly everyone gets a bit distracted with other things. However, what we've found is that, as we saw with that announcement last week from Phil Twyford, is that it's taken a few months, but we're starting to see that people are thinking about the recovery and the economic recovery quickly. They're coming to social enterprise and all the factors there, social procurement and in particular, and but also the investment into social enterprise. So yeah, maybe the blessing and the curse of a pandemic. Like for the last week, we've struggled to get some airtime for a few months there because everyone was so busy. But now, as they're going for the rebuild, it's maybe a bit easier. Yeah,
I'll just add another comment to that, and I think this is really showing the journey that we've been on. When this program was announced, it was led and held by the Department of Internal Affairs, and the reason for that was that social enterprise sat within the community and voluntary sector, which was, which made sense for some social enterprises, particularly for those that are like Ākina. We are owned by a charity, but we transact, and we have a foot in both the charitable space, but also in the business space. Other organisations, more community-based organisations, naturally move between that charitable space and the business space. But it was always difficult for us to have our partnership being held entirely by the Department of Internal Affairs, because that department doesn't necessarily get the benefit that what social enterprise delivers. That sits across probably about another 11 or 12 agencies, whereby the social and the environmental benefit generated by those social enterprise is of course delivering to those government priorities, whether they be in justice, employment, the environment, etc., etc. So over time, what we've done is we've started to develop very strong relationships with each of those agencies. And now that we're at the recommendation phase, those recommendations actually belong to the agencies whereby that benefit will be held. So for example, social procurement sits within MB, so the Ministry of Business and Innovation and Employment. When it comes to impact and impact measurement, well, that sits across the Ministry of Social Development. It sits across the Statistics New Zealand. It also sits within Treasury. And so when you start to unpack this, DIA has been a great vehicle for us to be able to start developing relationships across government. But now we're at this recommendation level. The relationships and the ongoing legacy actually sits within the agencies where those benefits are going to be generated from. And that's really exciting for us because it changes the game. When we've got MB understanding and really supporting the growth of impact in our economy, the game changes. And that's been a really exciting thing for us to see, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months. Whereby they've realised that actually business can generate social and environmental outcomes, and therefore, how do they support that? And so that's probably the key difference about where the baton will be moved to. There'll now be multiple batons, and each of those agencies will take those on further, but we've got to ensure that there's a strong voice and a strong oversight of that, which is one of the other recommendations that we're looking on, we're developing up jointly between all of these organisations that you see on the call here today.
Yeah, awesome. Cliff?
Yeah, just quickly answering your question, Bruce, what happens at the end of the project? I suppose before the project came along, we were doing what we were doing, and we were influencing government in different ways as much as we could. This has definitely enhanced that so that we can do it quicker and faster. but we were doing that anyway. And I think that's coming back to strong networks under the social umbrella of social enterprise umbrella, and that can be more business orientated, more community enterprise orientated, Māori. So you've already got those networks there, and they're growing, and I think growing really fast at the moment. So this won't stop no matter what. It'll continue because we've started this momentum, and we still go back to our normal jobs, and we don't stop doing this tomorrow if it was closed down tomorrow. So yeah, it's all going to carry on. I think I'd be very surprised if there's not some other way of bringing all this and continuing this in some form with some government department. And if not so, well, we'll just do it our own way, which we've done forever. So we will still influence. We will still have a voice in Wellington, no matter what.
Guy was just asking how we're positioning social enterprise within government to address some of New Zealand's big societal and environmental challenges, particularly given the impact of COVID-19, and what are some specific areas where social enterprise can really add value. So yes, I guess that's what that previous korero was just answering. But so just the second part of that question, from a personal point of view, when I think about, starting social enterprises, I'm interested in a couple of things. One is it's interesting what services government buys, so there's about $50 billion worth of, $50 to $60 billion worth of services that government buys. On the other hand, the private sector spends around about $600 billion on buying goods and services every year. So, so I guess deciding who your market is and who you're providing services to is just a good business decision. But in terms of specific areas, I personally go to the Colma Brunton report each year as a easy starting point. It's fascinating to see what New Zealanders are saying around what their concerns are, and you're seeing stuff around inequality, around poverty, you're seeing stuff around waste and plastic in the environment, and yeah, that's a good starting point, I think, for that. Just aware of the time, and we're moving on. So what I wanted just to ask Lou, Cliff and Nicola is, are there any particular events in the Aotearoa Conversations or in the Social Enterprise World Forum this week that you guys are looking forward to and are particularly keen to participate in the next few days, and why? Anyone got any that you're particularly, other than the ones you're presenting yourselves?
I'm really looking forward to the kickoff event, which is on the main stage. So this is starting on Wednesday evening. We have 3 pretty extraordinary young women entrepreneurs and policy leaders joining the stage. So have a look at the program. What we're wanting to do is really bring a voice of, what is the future around impact in our economy? How can we actually enable not just social enterprise to thrive, but the rest of our economy to look at social enterprise and be inspired by it? How can they incorporate impact into how we build back better? How can we actually enable an economy whereby people get the participation that they deserve, that our economy is built on providing the solutions that we need to address things like climate change? So that's a really exciting conversation. What we've tried to do from an Aotearoa New Zealand standpoint is that most people representing New Zealand within the Social Enterprise World Forum are under the age of 30. And that's actually been something right across the whole program, whereby every single panel has if not one, multiple people who are young leaders. And that's, I think, a real inspiring conversation for all of us. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing that the youth voice and the loud youth voice to challenge us all on how we can ensure that social enterprise is a significant part of our economy moving forward.
Great, thanks, Lou.
I'm prepared to do. I had a think about this.
Good on you, Cliff.
Yep. Okay. For me, I was looking more locally. I have to be honest, I haven't really decided on my international experiences yet completely. But I think for me, number one locally will be procurement. could be boring to some people, but it's actually crucial after doing this for a number of years. And I suppose the interest for me, and I'm putting it out there, is that I see one of the biggest opportunities in procurement is local government in New Zealand. Because it is local, you're living in the same places with the people who represent you, and government has, and local government's run by legislation. And under the Local Government Act, councils now have to consider social, cultural, local economic impacts of giving out their work. And when we start looking at that, so they're based local, they're in your town, you can influence them, and they've got that as a requirement under local government, and they handle a lot of money. In the far north, we're only a small council, small to medium. We spend $130 million a year annually. My estimate is that 30% of the work that local government in our area buy, the services they buy, could be done easily by social or community enterprise, really easily. We could do that 30% really well. So that's about $35 million annually that's available. And now that local government's starting to look that way, they get, the good thing about local government, when one trend starts, the whole lot of them follow. They have conferences and talk about it and do all this stuff. So they're starting to, we've got some good examples now of different councils buying into this. So you're talking, again, billions of dollars worth of activity within right on your back door, basically. And a lot of the things that they're doing are services we want to improve and do differently. And waste minimisation being an example. You know, we don't want to put it in a landfill. We want to gain a lot more out of it. So there's some really good examples. So that is available. It's going to be it's legislation now. They have to do it. It's a matter of actually getting up there and actually making sure that they know what they've got in front of them, checking their procurement policy, and we're really sitting pretty to do this. Has it been done? Yep. The waste minimisation, zero waste has been doing it for over 20 years, getting contracts from local government to provide services, and a whole lot of other people have done that as well. So really fertile land for large contracts. Then you can get, once you've got your large contract, you can do a whole lot of other things because you've got a bit of turnover and revenue and capacity. So yeah, I just think procurement is most probably the big one.
Thanks, Cliff. Awesome. And Nicola?
And from a completely different perspective, I want to do a shout out to a couple of great speakers in the program in the Aotearoa Conversations. 3 p.m. on Wednesday, Kath Dewar, who's fantastic, talking about who and how to focus on your customers. And then on Thursday at 3 p.m, you've got Rebecca and Annie talking about backboning teams for impact. And actually that concept's really interesting to me because I'm working with Rebecca right now. She's doing work on suicide prevention, which is of course about community well-being, and she wants an enterprise strand in there. So there are people, if we think of those earlier discussion and questions, who are driving those links together. So it's really good to see. So I'll give it, those two are really good. And then the other one that I'm looking forward to for myself is 1 p.m. tomorrow, the Wellbeing for Entrepreneurs session. I think that there's never too much time making sure that you look after yourself on the journey, because also you pick up what you need to share with others so you can help them manage the sustainability of what they're trying to achieve as well. There's a whole bunch of other stuff in the program for the international conference, which thankfully is being recorded because there's so much of what I want to see is in the wrong time zone. So I'm looking forward to catching up on that too.
Awesome. Great, excellent. So yes, so is that right, Ellen, that all the international programs getting recorded and somehow will be made available?
Yeah, absolutely. So the program is following the sun, so non-stop for 5 days throughout the week. We'll have sessions being live streamed from different countries and places in the world. So everything will be recorded so that ticket holders can, view everything they want to without having to be up at 3 in the morning. Okay. Some of them already said they will be up at 3 in the morning because nothing is like, the first-hand experience and obviously being able to ask questions directly. But yeah, it's going to be an amazing week and the biggest social enterprise world from ever. A silver lining of the COVID-19 crisis, really.
Awesome. I'm just aware of time, and Ross, you've made a very valuable point. I'm just going to give you my email address, and we can chat about that perhaps offline. Just you can email me about the question around how we're getting on getting government to understand the needs and the issues for social entrepreneurial or social enterprises. Yeah, it's a good question, and it sounds like you've got some good ideas there too. So folks, yeah, wonderful. Thanks very much for joining us. This is the first session in Aotearoa Conversations. Really, it's great because we're at the start of the world time zone. So started with probably the first session for the whole Social Enterprise World Forum, I guess, which is even before it starts. So that's pretty awesome. We're going to be back again on Friday at 3 o'clock. And that session will be just a chance for us to debrief a bit on what we've experienced during the week. It'll be much more open. We'll just shoulder tap people to give us their thoughts and share what we've all learnt from the week. So hopefully you can join us again then at 3 o'clock on Friday, the same link here, same Zoom channel. So in the meantime, mā te wā, and yeah, blessings and go well. Kia ora, folks.